I'd gone through a really bad phase with kind of disordered eating for such a long amount of time that I couldn't really see that it was so disordered. 90% of my brain space was occupied by food. How many calories I was eating, like protein, I was obsessed. If you haven't had a period, which is called amenorrhea, for more than 6 months, you're irreversibly like destroying your bone health.
Hey guys, and welcome back to another exciting episode of Catch-Ups in My Kitchen with me, Georgia Simmons, host of the podcast. In my kitchen this week, I am joined by Sophie Gastman, who is known on Instagram as Sophie the Nutritionist. And we just have a big old chit chat about all things food. We talk about being plant-based, then coming out of the plant-based phase and eating more animal products, as well as kind of some more sensitive topics such as Sophie's relationship with herself, Sophie's relationship with food, her younger self, reflecting on that, how plant-based may have been used as more of a control element. We touch on things that I honestly think a lot of people will be able to relate to. It was a really honest conversation. It was a very vulnerable conversation, and it's one that I think you guys are really going to enjoy. So without further ado, let's go and meet Sophie in the kitchen. Sophie, welcome to my kitchen. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Thank you for having me.
I'm really excited to have you here. Do you mind giving a really quick elevator pitch? Who you are,
Yes.
What you do?
Okay, I'm Sophie. I'm a registered nutritionist specialising in public health. I currently work at a school food charity called Chefs in Schools, which I feel like not many people know that I have an actual job. But we kind of are on a mission to transform school food across the UK, so slightly less glamorous than the Instagram side of things. But yes, I also very much on social media, making recipes, debunking myths around nutrition, and generally just trying to stop the diet culture nonsense.
Yeah, I love it. Didn't know about the job, and that's amazing because school food, I mean, I touch on this quite a lot, but like your food journey starts when you're young.
Yeah.
And so the food you eat at school plays a massive part in like how you think about food.
Oh, huge.
So
yeah.
I think that's really, really important, and that's amazing.
Everyone's got a school food memory. Like we can all remember what our school food was like.
Yeah, completely. So yeah, I love that. Right, we have a quick fire round about all things food.
Okay.
So what was your favourite restaurant in London?
I'm going to do that typical thing because I can't give you one.
Go on, we love recommendations. If you have more than one, that's great.
I have loads, honestly, but I'll do top 3.
Yeah.
I'm going to caveat because I've been loving places like Oma, Agora recently, but I feel like everyone's talking about them. We all know.
They're hot right now. So if you haven't gone, go.
We're ignoring those. So top 3, I'm going to go My Neighbours the Dumplings, Clapton.
Ooh, not been. Okay.
Yeah, delicious. Small menu, dumplings, can't go wrong, delicious. Number 2, I would say Farang in Highbury and Islington.
Also not been.
Underrated, in my opinion. It's a Thai restaurant, and you can get this feasting menu, and it's so much food, and they just keep bringing dishes, and it's great. You don't have to choose anything. It's just
amazing. I'm actually going to Islington on Saturday, and I don't really go that way very often. So good recommendation.
Check it out. And then the third one is also a popular place, Tamil Prince. Can't get a table there.
I also haven't heard of this. Have I been living under a rock?
It's like an Indian kind of pub restaurant vibe, but really good. So for context, I'm Indian. Mm-hmm. My mum's Indian, and I took her there for lunch, and it's the only Indian restaurant she's ever raved about. So
okay, it's good.
Stamp of approval from us.
I love that. Okay, great recommendations. What would be your go-to Deliveroo?
Oh, this sounds really nutrition-y. I don't really Deliveroo.
No, I don't.
But it's not for like it's never as nice as I want it to be.
Agree.
And I'm like, and it's so expensive.
Agree.
And I'm just a bit like, I don't know why I did that. I also have a thing about food temperature. I want my food to be hot. Mm-hmm. So
it's always a disappointment unless I get like an Attis or like a big salad.
If I lived near an Attis, it would be detrimental to my bank account for sure, because I would definitely do that.
It's so good.
But if I do Deliveroo, 90% of the time I'm getting pizza. Okay. I'll eat that cold. I don't mind.
Yeah. Okay, fine. What is your hangover meal?
Ooh. Okay. this again, really boring. If I'm waking up hungover, I want toast, like buttered, really buttery toast, or a crumpet, like something carby, like a wedge of sourdough.
Yeah.
Buttered. Depending on level of hungoverness, I might add like a fried egg or something.
Yep.
If I'm too hungover, that's not happening.
Fine. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, favourite coffee shop?
Crumb in Islington. This is, I should caveat that it's my sister's shop, so I'm slightly biased.
Okay, fine.
However, it is great coffee.
Nice.
Really good. Like sourced from a place that's local to us. Did a lot of tastings. It's great coffee.
Love that. Okay, crumb, love. Which food for you is a complete no-no?
Oh, like mussels, oysters, anything of that. What do you call them? Like sea
Shellfish?
Oh, I don't
but
know. I like
is it
prawns.
crustaceans?
One of those.
I think. Oh, don't come at me if that's wrong.
I feel like I should know this.
Yeah, maybe.
But like any of those like wobbly kind of
wobbly shellfish
is how I would describe it. For me, the food poisoning risk is not worth it.
Yeah, agree. Okay, and then what's your favourite dish to cook at home?
I love a miso salmon. I have it at least once a week because it's just like it's so fast. I like put it in the air fryer, miso marinade, cook my rice, put all my veg in the air fryer as well, like crispy, kale, speedy. It's something I can just do on autopilot. So I'm like fast.
Okay, good one.
Now.
So funny that you mentioned your favourite dish is salmon because I want to touch on your food journey. Because you were plant-based.
I was.
And I think I was also plant-based. I'd still say I'm plant-rich. We'll get onto it.
Yeah.
But let's talk about why you went plant-based.
Okay. So I went plant-based I feel like it was 2014, 2015. So we're talking well before it was cool or a thing. It was very much like quinoa and Linda McCartney sausages were probably as exciting as it was going to get. Like there was none of this vegan Dominoes or whatever. And it's a really difficult question as to why I went plant-based because at the time I was probably like 16, 17. And I classically watched a couple of those documentaries, the Cowspiracy, Vegucated, and I was like, right, I'm not eating meat ever again. Which was quite easy for us because in my family we didn't really grow up eating much meat, so that was okay. And then gradually I kind of started cutting out the dairy. I was getting quite, I want to use the word indoctrinated by these documentaries about, dairy being absolutely awful for you. And I was like, okay, right, I'm getting rid of all of it. And I became quite a strict plant-based person.
How strict?
As in like would get super stressed about kind of what I was eating and like
going out for dinner
was hellish. In fact, I didn't do it that often, which was a shame. And to be honest, if I look back on it now, I know deep down that the whole reason I went plant-based wasn't necessarily 100% environmental or like animal welfare reasons. I think that played a little bit into it, but I think the main reason was probably like having some element of control over what I was eating in a slightly more acceptable way.
Yeah.
So
no, completely. I do think in the space, the more you look, the more you see with that.
Oh, yeah.
So you start going down this kind of hole of researching and you're like, oh my God, look at the eggs. And for me, similar kind of journey. I stopped eating meat because of, it started with dairy. I was lactose intolerant when I was really young. Okay. So dairy was an easy out. Well, I had to cut it.
Yeah.
That was just when the soy milk was the only option. And then chocolate was just like, it tasted like plastic. So then I cut out meat because of just taste. And I was like, I just don't really like meat. I just don't really think it's good for me. I think it's heavy. I think it's bad. Just not great. So cut meat out. Then I watched Seaspiracy and cut out fish. Then I was like, I am going vegan. And then cut out eggs as a result of that. And then, the more you look, the more you see in terms of then I was like, my For You page was telling me that I was making the right move and everything was then kind of like going crazy about how veganism was the right thing to do. And I was like, yep. But I think it was more from, everything had a different why, but I think the overall reason was ethics for fish, but more probably from what I thought was a health benefit at that time.
Yeah.
But you're now not vegan.
No.
So what happened?
So I was vegan for like 6 years, which is actually quite a long time. And it definitely like shaped a lot of, it was like across a really like prominent like teenage to like young adulthood phase. And there's probably two main reasons why I stopped. One of them was a simple kind of reason of I love traveling, and the idea of like going to places and not being able to eat the local food is just really upsetting.
Yeah.
So like I'd go to, especially like going to places like India where my family live, and them like wanting to feed me as kind of like that's how they show love, and me being like, oh, I can't eat that as it got dairy in it, and like trying to communicate with them in a different, like it's
hard.
It's hard.
They don't get it.
And it's offensive as well. So there's that. And, you know, there was the particular year I decided to start eating things again. I'd gone to like Peru, Thailand, Vietnam. And I was a bit like, oh, it would be nice to eat fish and like kind of enjoy the local cuisine. So that was one kind of like very surface level reason. The second reason, which was my main reason, was that just having restriction and rules around food was absolutely not serving me at all. And yeah, I just didn't feel like it was really hard to let go of the persona of being vegan, because I'd really attached myself to it. But I like came to a really solid conclusion that it wasn't working for me. And TMI, but it didn't have a period for about 6 years. So I was like, something needs to change. So that was when I started the journey.
I think that the whole like putting yourself into a box thing needs to change.
Yes.
Because I felt like this, and I actually had a vegan business, and I literally was walking around with a cap saying greedy vegan. I was the mascot. I was leading the charge. So I really did attach myself to the whole like journey of it.
Yeah.
But you know, it's difficult to detach yourself from that. But I think it's okay to be plant rich and have a steak occasionally. It's okay to not eat eggs and suddenly decide to eat eggs again. It's okay to not eat dairy but then have cheese on your pasta when you're out. Like, why are we all putting ourselves in these kind of boxes?
And this was like my exact thought process. I was kind of like, why am I labeling myself and like literally putting myself in a box? Like I don't eat anywhere as much meat as most normal people do. Like I wasn't brought up, I've never had a steak in my life. Don't like it, don't want to. I'll have like chicken occasionally. Like I eat eggs fairly frequently, but like it's not much, and like I don't see why we can't just have that kind of, I like that, plant rich or plant focused.
Completely.
Yeah.
So let's talk about when it wasn't really serving you from like a restriction perspective, because I do think going plant-based, a lot of people did do that for control. So touch on your relationship with food, maybe at that time. Was it positive?
No, unsurprisingly. It wasn't positive at all. I'd kind of struggled. I'd gone through a really bad phase with kind of disordered eating for such a long amount of time that I couldn't really see that it was so disordered, because it was just like, it was from, you know, the age of probably 15, 16 to like up into my early 20s. So I convinced myself that it was normal, but it definitely wasn't. I was, you know, really maybe like 90% of my brain space was occupied by food and like what I was eating, what I was doing, how much exercise I was doing, like how many calories I was eating, like protein, like I was obsessed. And then I went off to university to study nutrition and food science, which, as you can imagine, you know, that's now my brain 100% food thoughts.
Yeah.
And it's a really common trope that people who go into nutrition have had eating disorders or have eating disorders or have had disordered eating. I hate that I fall into that category, but here we are. Yeah. But yeah, it was just not conducive to like having a healthy relationship with food. I was just so obsessed with what was going into my body. And it's, you know, like you said, from a health perspective, that whole orthorexic mindset of being like, oh, I can't eat this because it's going to do something to my body that I don't want. Like, yeah, it was very much around control.
So then how did you break out of that?
It was really hard. And I think it's never a linear process. There were definitely points as I'd got older that I thought, look, I really need to kind of, I don't want to be like this anymore. But then, you know, something bad happens or you get stressed. And for me, it was like my second year at uni, exams were like hellish. Really easy to just fall back into that pattern because it's comforting and it's what you know, and like really strictly controlling your food intake. But I remember one of the first turning points for me was I had a lecture at uni. I think it was in sports nutrition or something. And we had someone come in and speak to us about eating disorders. And I feel like it was eating disorders and ballet or something along those lines. And I remember hearing for the first time that if you haven't had a period, which is called amenorrhea, for more than 6 months, you're irreversibly like destroying your bone health.
This episode is sponsored by Wild, the online farmers market which bring together farmers, fishermen, producers, pickers and growers from all across the country and deliver their produce in one convenient box straight to your door wherever you are in the country. I have been on a journey of introducing more and more animal products into my diet, and Wild has played a really important part in that journey for me. What's important for me is sustainability, and I know when I place my order with Wild, the fish is coming from UK waters and the vegetables and fruit is local and seasonal. And for me, that is really, really important. I had the co-founder Ella on the podcast, so if you want to check out more about Wild, make sure to listen to that episode. Wild are kindly giving us all £15 off our first order with the code KITCHEN15. So make sure to check them out at WYLDE wild.market and use the code KITCHEN15 for £15 off. Thank you, Wild, for creating a service that I am absolutely obsessed with. Now, let's get back to the episode.
And I left, like me sitting there, hadn't had a period in about 6 years. I left that lecture, was like, oh my God, like I need to change something because I don't, like I'm so focused on wanting to be the healthiest version of me, yet like I'm not.
Yeah.
So that was turning point number 1. Turning point number 2, I moved to the Netherlands for a year, in a placement year for university. And I don't know what happened, like a big mindset shift. I was injured at the time, so it hurt my back, so I couldn't really do any exercise. And just being in a different place, different people, wanting to explore, I just let everything go. And that was actually the time where I stopped being vegan as well. So yeah, those were my 2 turning points of wanting to kind of step out.
And they came from you.
Yeah.
Did you have a moment before that change where people were trying to get involved to try and help you or guide you out of being controlled?
Yeah. So bless my mother. I'm so sorry. But when I was like 15, 16, still living at home, and I was kind of in this whole like, oh, don't cook with oil, don't do this. And like she did like appease me, which I always feel really bad about.
Yeah.
Because my mother's like a fantastic cook. So for her to do that, I feel very bad. And she got really annoyed at me and was like, you're not eating properly. Like, what's wrong with you? Like, you've lost so much weight, and kind of was doing everything she could to try and get through to me. But I was a stubborn teenager and it didn't work. And like you said, it has to come in any form of change. Like it has to come from you. Otherwise, what's the point?
Yeah.
Like, you're not going to do it.
No, completely.
So.
And do you think social media or your account helped you out of that, or did it hold you back?
That's an interesting one, because I always tell people this. So I've had my account for over 10 years now. So I actually started this account the same time all of that kind of stuff started happening. And this was prior to Instagram being a thing. So it wasn't cool to have Instagram. Influencers didn't exist. What a time.
Wow.
Yeah.
Can't imagine it.
It was actually really nice.
Refreshing.
It was really nice. But it was the kind of like peak of clean eating, like Deliciously Ella, almond butter, greens powders, all of that kind of detox teas everywhere. So it wasn't that nice. But I started my Instagram as kind of like a food diary, which wasn't great. Like it was another obsession, a form of like tracking what I was eating. And then like very slowly I was kind of gaining followers. I got up to about 3,000 followers at the time. Massive deal.
Huge.
I was like, wow, I'm famous.
I'm famous. Everyone in the supermarket is looking at me. I know, I'm big.
But no, like I remember one of the first PR things I ever got was Pippa Nut, because I'd emailed Pippa, the woman who owns it, and was like, oh, like I'd love to try it. And she was like brand new at the time, sent me like all these little Pippa Nut sachets.
I love that.
And I'm like, oh, that's so sweet.
That's so good. That's so good.
How times have changed. So then I kind of had this community of probably other vegans and other people that were also kind of suffering with eating disorders. And I think that was a lot of my following. So it maybe did perpetuate it quite a lot. So at that point, it wasn't helpful at all. Now, obviously, it's transformed into something completely different, which I love. So
yeah, completely. I do think, did you find it, because obviously you were posting plant-based recipes and you had a cult plant-based following.
Yeah.
So then coming out of that, like, did you feel like guilty? Were you worried? How did people respond? Did you have to make it an announcement? Did you not?
Well, luckily at the time when I did it, I didn't have that many followers. I had like 10,000 followers, but I was still quite worried about it because I was like, oh, like a lot of my friends in the space are also vegans and I don't want to kind of like cause any rifts or like have people, you know, call me out because like it's a really personal reason. So I remember I did a couple of stories or something kind of explaining the reason why. And I feel like you can't really argue with that. Like if I'm like, oh, look, you know, it doesn't benefit me because I had disordered eating.
No one can really say anything.
I mean, people can, but luckily they didn't. I feel like if I'd done it now, it would have probably been a different story.
Yeah, no, fully. And your content now, so you often kind of go through like debunking myths and talking about diet culture. So what stemmed your kind of reason for talking about that?
So obviously now I've come out the other side. I've got a degree in nutrition. I'm much more like aligned with how things work, and I've got a lot more knowledge and a lot more experience as well of just generally working with people. And also my own personal experience, I know how much the media and like Instagram kind of played into my experience. I can only imagine how much worse it is now for people because it's just incessant. That is why I'm so like passionate about like nipping it in the bud. And I'm like, okay, everyone just needs to calm down.
Yeah.
It's all gonna be fine.
You're basically being the girl that you wish you followed 10
100%.
years ago or 8 years ago.
Yeah, 100%.
And I think it's so refreshing because, yeah, like everyone does need to calm down a bit.
Yeah.
Let's just touch on a few things.
Okay.
I quite like this game. So your thoughts, you've made your thoughts on the glucose goddess, for example, quite out there. And she's someone who you see a lot on Instagram. Thoughts on her and why you've spoken up about her?
Yeah. So for context, in case anyone doesn't know who the glucose goddess is, she's a French biochemist. I think her real name is Jessie Inchaspe. I've absolutely butchered that. She's got about 5 million followers on Instagram from talking about glucose spikes, which is crazy. Absolutely crazy. And I would also like to caveat that I'm not personally attacking her as a person. I just think when someone's being quite unethical in what they're doing, unethical rather, I'm going to call it out.
Yeah.
Especially when they're reaching that many people. 5 million is huge.
Huge.
And like my main issues with her is like I said, she's a biochemist. She's not a nutritionist. She's not a health professional. She knows about biochemistry, which is fine. But I think it plays into the whole idea of like people just trust anyone who sounds vaguely sciencey. You're like, oh, biochemist, sure. She knows what she's talking about. She stuck a few graphs up. Yeah, cool. But she might like understand things, nutrition or nutrients at a very molecular level in a lab. But that doesn't translate to kind of giving advice out to people, understanding how it works in the human body. So that's my main issue, is that there's a very clear lack of understanding. Number two, she's using a lot of her own personal experience to kind of give suggestions for everyone else. And if you know about science, that's not how it works. You can't use your own anecdotal experience to kind of extrapolate it to the rest of the population. It just doesn't work like that. We're all different. You know, we need lots of big studies to make points. And then the research that she does use is often really flawed. So I didn't really know much about the glucose goddess, to be honest, before, but I was commissioned to write an article. So I did a deep dive into her website. And I was shocked at some of the studies that she'd referenced to kind of back her claims up. They were so bad, like such poor design studies with like 10 people. They weren't controlled. It was just awful. And I was like, how are you making wild conclusions from this teeny tiny study done in like Sweden on like 10 men?
Yeah, exactly. And also like, what she's telling you to do is not normal stuff.
No. Well, this is the issue, right? So a lot of her advice is great. It's good advice. I'm not going to argue with that. You know, eating a balanced meal, going for a walk after a meal, all good things, all things we've been saying for a long, long time. She's just kind of repackaged it as a hack. But she's mixed that up into stuff like, you know, having a shot of apple cider vinegar before you eat. And it's like, no.
Yeah.
Why?
Why?
And it's like those strict, rigid rules of people thinking, oh, I'm going to have to carry around a bottle of apple cider vinegar in my bag and, you know, shot it every time I want to eat something. I've seen people do it as well. It's insane.
It's insane, but as you said in one of your posts, like the stress of shotting that apple cider vinegar will kill you more than not having that apple cider vinegar shot.
And also like disgusting.
Gross. So don't do it.
You're going to like ruin your intestine.
It's so, yeah, it's, and your teeth.
And your teeth.
Well, yeah, agree. Yeah. Too acidic.
Gross.
And one thing you love and one thing she doesn't love is oats. And I'd love to talk about this because she's always like, savoury breakfast, and I am a sweet breakfast girl.
Me too. I'm really standing up for the sweet breakfast gals because I can't fathom eating eggs that early in the morning. Like, just it's not for me. I tried it and I was like, no. And I think what she's kind of forgetting to communicate with people is that it's not necessarily the fact that the breakfast needs to be savoury. It just needs to be balanced. So if you're gonna have oats for breakfast, great, but just add some protein, add some healthy fats. So we're talking about adding, maybe you add a scoop of peanut butter, I was going to say protein powder into your oats, bit of peanut butter on top, or Greek yogurt, some nuts, like just making sure it's not just a plain bowl of oats, which I don't think many people eat really.
No, if you're just microwaving some oats, milk, some honey,
that's a bit sad.
And also just for taste purposes, add some fruit and some nut butter on top. Like, and you will enjoy it.
Bit of crunch as well.
Yeah.
I've converted people into porridge lovers.
Can you please share your recipe? Because your bowls, I was deep dive stalking your Instagram just before, like kind of just getting some more inspo. And I was like, oh my God, the porridges are insane. So I know you've shared it on your Instagram, but can you just share it?
Yeah, absolutely. I've literally been eating the same breakfast for so many years. I've not got sick of it yet. Okay, and it's gonna sound really complicated, which I hate, but it's not complicated and it doesn't take that long.
Okay.
People think I spend hours crafting my breakfast. I don't. Anyway, so normally it starts the night before because I like to soak my oats.
Oh, okay.
Mainly because, I mean, I have heard things about it helps digestion. I don't know. It cooks quicker if you soak them.
Okay, great.
And it's just like getting ahead of myself the next day. I'm like, it's all ready to go.
Nice.
So I get my oats, flaxseed, scoop of flaxseed in there, pinch of salt. Not enough people are doing that. Pinch of salt, perfect balance. A bit of cinnamon, and then I also do a bit of protein powder. It's a vegan protein powder, whatever I've got.
Nice. Vanilla flavour?
No.
Oh, sorry.
I have a real thing about artificially flavoured things.
It's plain?
I just don't like the taste. So I do plain and then I sweeten it myself.
Oh my God, I don't think I have seen unflavoured before.
Yeah, unflavoured protein. It by itself, disgusting.
Yeah. Okay. I'm on board.
But I don't like committing to a flavour either.
Fine. Yeah, it's commitment for about a month or
exactly.
two.
Massive.
Yeah.
And then I cover it in hot water and I leave that overnight. It soaks. Next morning, I'm adding in a mashed banana and I'm cooking it on the stove, low and slow. Nothing against microwaves, but I've been there where I've put it in the microwave and then all of a sudden it's all over the microwave. I don't want to do that in the morning. That's the worst. That will ruin my day.
Yeah, agree.
So on the stove where I can see it. And controversially is why I cook it with water.
I saw you did that and I'm actually on board with that because sometimes I think it can be really
claggy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Don't love that.
No, me either. I've been like bullied for cooking my oats with water. People are like, that's so disgusting. And I'm like, don't knock it until you've tried it because the banana makes it creamy. Then the water just cooks it nicely. And then I add a splash of milk in at the end and stir it through. For me, that's perfect.
Yeah.
And then I'm topping it with some, I always have frozen blueberries, frozen cherries in the freezer, microwave those. So they're all warm and juicy.
Nice.
On top, peanut butter, crunchy always, and some Greek yogurt and a sprinkle of something that's crunchy.
Insane.
Yeah.
That is just an insane bowl. I need to recreate. I haven't had porridge in a while, but which is weird because I used to be a real porridge person and now I'm kind of having like Greek yogurt and protein powder mixed together,
Delicious.
or a smoothie. Even in the winter, I still like a smoothie. Weird.
Okay, that is
weird.
weird.
It is weird. It is weird. I'm sorry about that. It is weird. But yeah, oats aren't bad.
No.
So it's good that you're
Yeah,
that you're debunking that.
Please, yeah.
What are some of your other kind of like pet peeves?
Pet peeves of general stuff I've seen online.
Yeah, because also, I mean, you've touched on like the fact that you're a nutritionist and the fact that Glucose Goddess is a biochemist. And I mean, one of my kind of pet peeves is like you often see like 5 tips by a nutritionist.
Yeah.
And like I've done a course online and I have a certificate, very basic level of a nutritionist, whatever it is. I'm not a nutritionist.
Yeah.
I am really not. I just spent some time online once and I got a certificate to prove I did it.
I just wanted to know more.
I wanted to know more. I did a bit of research. I got a certificate. Well done me.
Yeah.
But
well
I'm
done
not
you.
a nutritionist at all.
Thank you for saying that, because there are a lot of people who would have done the same thing and then been like, right, cool, I'm a nutritionist. I'm going to start giving out meal plans and helping people, which I think is always good intentioned. So I don't wish to kind of like completely batter people. However, unfortunately, it's not a protected title. So you could do your 2-week course, or you could have someone who's done a PhD in nutrition and you're both calling yourselves a nutritionist. Like, make that make sense.
Yeah.
Really. Like it's really difficult for the public, the general public, to kind of know the difference. And then there's the whole, you know, I'm a registered nutritionist. Not a lot of people can call themselves registered nutritionists. Some of them can't. It's very complicated. So you get a lot of people who've not got the right qualifications or aren't held to any kind of ethical practice that just spout out a load of rubbish, unfortunately. You know, they're promoting random supplements that you don't need. They're kind of cherry picking evidence, or maybe not fully understanding how the research actually works and kind of coming to the wrong conclusions about it. And I see that quite a lot when you actually look at the studies they've referenced and you're like, oh, that's not what the study says, actually. But, you know, people are very gullible.
Yeah, no, they are for sure. And so what are your other things you see online? You're like, it's finally winding me up.
Oh, there's so many. There's so many. But overarching all of it, for me, the main issue I have is that often the advice isn't very, like culturally relevant, or kind of just like relevant to the general population. You know, these people speak to a really specific set of people that can afford to eat in a certain way. You know, the worried well that are just like hyper focused on their health. And I get that, but you know, it's not helpful information for most of us to kind of be really zooming in on one thing and getting really obsessed over it, or thinking that we need to take a whole pill box of supplements every morning, or thinking that you have to have your greens powder and your ashwagandha and in order to be healthy, because it's just not, that's not how it is.
Yeah.
And it kind of sets that standard as like peak health is only for those who can afford it, which I hate that messaging.
So true. And actually can be so simple.
Yeah.
Seed oils.
Oh God, yeah. Ooh.
What are your thoughts on this?
Oh, I just think for me, it's just so wild that like every couple of months or every year, there's something new that someone just decides to pick on. And I'm like, seed oils have been around for ages. We've been consuming them for ages. Why now are we suddenly picking on them? And it's a classic case of kind of the research being taken and just completely misunderstood. And it's spiraling out of control into this huge scaremongering. You get people in supermarkets shouting at the cameras. It's crazy. And the reason why people have suddenly become so obsessed with seed oils is because they contain something called omega-6 fatty acids, which have been linked to inflammation, and then chronic inflammation linked to things like cardiovascular disease, all of that kind of stuff. So logically, I can understand why people have come to this conclusion, but unfortunately, humans are not straightforward as that. Once you start consuming things, the body does all its different processes, and it's not as simple as kind of like in and out. So none of the research currently actually backs up the idea that seed oils are bad for us. It's quite the opposite, you will be pleased to know. But basically what happens is, so linoleic acid, this is going to get a bit sciencey, but I'm going to try and make it simple.
Yeah.
Linoleic acid is the omega-6 acid that's found in seed oils, not linked to inflammation at all. What happens is, in the body, it gets transformed into something called arachidonic acid. That is linked to inflammation, but it's also linked to a lot of other good things in the body that it does, like blood clotting and important things for our skin. And most of the studies, and they're human studies, which is important because we're humans, have shown that really not a lot of linoleic acid actually gets transported into arachidonic acid in the body, so it's not really happening. And omega-6 consumption in humans has not yet been linked to inflammation. So I'm not really sure where people are getting this information from. And, you know, there's other reasons why people kind of jump onto seed oils. There's a lot of them in UPF, ultra-processed foods, but it's not the seed oils in there. It's kind of that combination of high fat, high salt, high sugar foods that we already know that we shouldn't really be having that much of. It's not necessarily like if you're cooking with rapeseed oil, by all means, go for it. Like, you don't need to be obsessed and worry.
That is really crazy that when you break it down like that, you're like, no, it's not actually that bad. Whereas like you're hearing such terrible things and such scaremongering.
And like people just, I think the thing is people say it with their chest and then confidence, and suddenly people just want to believe them. Well, they put a PubMed reference in there. And most of the studies that do kind of are against omega-6 consumption or the seed oil thing are all done on rats and mice. And unsurprisingly, you know, we don't respond to the same way because we're not rodents.
Oh my God, isn't it crazy?
Yeah. But
like, people are just completely changing the way they're eating because of this.
Yeah.
And like, I like to cook with like sesame oil sometimes when I'm making Asian dishes.
Delicious.
And but I was like, for a minute, I was like, oh my God, but now I buy like organic sesame oil.
Yeah.
So I'm just like, okay. And I try and buy, which sounds like a privilege, which actually shouldn't be, but like the quality of, I'm trying to buy better quality in everything. And obviously to an extent, we can't, I don't want my food bill being £100, but like, you know, where possible.
And that's the thing, like if you can afford it, then why not, by all means. But I think it's kind of making sure that the people who don't feel like they can afford it know that, like, you know, people are out here just trying to do their best. And if your best is kind of cooking with rapeseed oil, then like, oh my God, please, like I'd rather people eat than, you know, panic and think they have to spend loads of money on food. Food's expensive.
Completely.
So expensive.
So with all this misinformation online and with all this kind of like diet culture, and we touched on like restrictive eating, if people listening or if someone listening has like experienced or is experiencing restrictive thoughts and they like don't know how to get out of it, their For You page is full of different things, what would you recommend if you maybe were speaking to your younger self or someone else now? What would you recommend to them?
I would say firstly, if you're someone who's struggling at all, speak to a professional. So an eating disorders like therapist, a specialized eating disorder therapist, a registered dietitian that specializes in eating disorders, and like a reminder that you don't have to be, you know, really, really ill in order to kind of ask for help. Like, I think there's often this kind of misconception that, you know, I'm not ill enough or I'm not underweight enough to get help. But if you're having those thoughts, like, and you want help, please ask for help. That would be the first thing I would say. Secondly, curate your feed, unfollow people. And I think as well, like, sometimes you don't even realize who's actually subconsciously impacting you. So you see a lot of like what I eat in a day videos where people are body checking at the beginning, and like subconsciously it makes you feel shit because you're like, oh, like she looks like that and she's barely eating anything or whatever. Unfollow them, just get rid of them all. Follow more people that kind of preach the exact opposite, or maybe they're not even in the food space. Just do something else.
Yeah.
Step back. And also like curating the people in your life as well. Bit more of a tricky one, but if you're surrounding yourself maybe with people who are also very much focused on kind of diet culture and jumping onto all these trends, maybe you need to distance yourself from those people a bit, or have a conversation with them like, hey, I would rather not talk about that when you're with me, and kind of just putting boundaries in, I guess.
Yeah, I think all three of those are such good ones. I think getting help one's probably going to be the most impactful, but maybe the hardest because you're kind of accepting what's happening.
I will admit it is the hardest thing. And I think if you've got an eating disorder or that kind of, you're in that space, an eating disorder brain is very clever, and it will make you think that you're fine and that you don't need help, or you're not sick enough, or, you know, this is your coping mechanism. And it's really hard to see it. But the one thing I regret not doing is asking for help and just being honest with myself.
Yeah, completely. Talking of like reflection and looking back, I loved your post on like, I took my younger self for coffee.
That was so sad.
It's so sad. This trend is really nice though.
Yeah.
But you took your younger self for coffee, and can you share kind of what you were reflecting on? Because you could have said you kind of struggled with like your path and your identity and all of that. So can you share a bit about maybe you younger and then you now?
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, it is such a lot. It's like the nicest trend I think I've seen on social media.
Doc is having a fit on the sofa.
Stephen, he's like, pay me attention.
I mean, wow, okay. Sorry, continue.
But yeah, one of the nicest trends I've seen on social media, and I've like loved reading other people's as well. And I think, I mean, for me, I really struggled being a child or like a teenager, like a young, like 12. I would never wish to go back to that age. And I just really struggled to like fit in. I always felt like I was kind of like on the outside of things. I was maybe a bit different. I was really shy, like so incredibly shy.
Same.
Wouldn't speak to anybody. I had, you know, the classic like fringe that everyone had back in the day, like so much hair, like literally hid behind my fringe and just like didn't want to be noticed at all, which is hilarious now. But yeah, I struggled a lot. And then I also kind of just struggled with knowing what I wanted to do. Like I had no idea as a child. I was very confused.
Yeah.
Didn't know what I wanted to do. Was kind of everyone else around me was like really had a direction. Like my sister knew exactly where she wanted to go. My friends were like, yeah, I want to do this. And I was like, I am so lost and like unsure about everything. And I just want to make the right decision, but I don't know what it is. Which was, yeah, difficult at the time because I think as well, like when you're that age, your whole world is school and your friends and your social circle. And I didn't really like my social circle was pretty non-existent, and then I didn't know what I wanted to do when I was older, so I was a bit like, oh god, just like floating in the abyss.
Oh no, but like it's so nice when you reflect on that time and then see where you are now, and you're like, wow. You also touched on like you struggled with the fact that like your mum was Indian when you were at school.
Yeah.
And that's quite crazy. And obviously now like you probably really like thrive in that.
Oh,
and
God,
like it's probably curated a lot of like what you cook and how you eat now.
Yeah, no, absolutely. My like cultural journey has been like really interesting and quite long. And I think I didn't really acknowledge it about myself until I was a bit older, that I actually am like, so for context, my mum's Indian and my dad's English, but he's Jewish. So it was a really weird mixture of cultures growing up, but you kind of just think it's normal because it's all you know. And I think when you have parents that have kind of stepped out of their own religion and married in together, you lose a lot of the culture. So like I'm not super close with either side of my parents' families, and we're not like super stuck into any real cultural traditions. It's only like more so now that we've got a bit older that we're kind of getting more into things. And I'm like, Mum, like teach me how to make everything, because you know, I don't know how to cook this. I need to know how to make Indian food so I can pass it on to my kids. And also like one of my pipe dreams is to learn Punjabi. So it's my mum's first language, but she didn't teach us, which
annoying.
Really annoying, because what a flex to be like, I speak 2 languages.
I know.
So that's another pipe dream, is to learn the language so I can kind of reconnect. But yeah, as a child, I was definitely something I kind of shunned a little bit. You just want to be like everyone else. I went to a very white school. I mean, I'm very white passing. My name's Sophie. Like it was kind of easy to just like push it to the side. But like, you know, I didn't really want people to come over if the house smelled like Indian food. Like we didn't really have it that much because my mum felt like no one wanted it. Sad.
Yeah.
But we've done a complete 180 now. So I literally, anytime I go home, I'm like, let's have Indian food.
Yeah. So what is your relationship with it all now? And what's your relationship with food like now?
Oh, two big questions.
Yeah.
Yes. Now I obviously love my mum's Indian food. It's like my favorite thing ever. It's just like comfort, pure comfort. And definitely going to bring her into more videos. The social media world loves her, which is great.
Oh, that's so nice.
And so like just cooking together is really nice. And kind of just, getting a bit more in touch with the heritage. My relationship with food now, wow, has come a very, very long way. I think, it'd be wrong for me to be like, oh, I'm 100% fine, I don't think about food and whatever. I think once you've had any form of like disordered eating or eating disorder, the voice never really goes away. Like it does get quieter, like don't get me wrong, I don't kind of partake in any of those habits now, but there are definitely really low moments where that voice is still in my head, but I have kind of the control now to choose to ignore it, which is where I would say I'm at. And I eat everything I want. It's definitely doesn't occupy 90% of my brain anymore, which is great.
Amazing. Amazing. I do love what you said though, because I agree. I do think that if you struggle with an eating disorder, those thoughts are always going to come into your head, but you've just got the tools now to turn them off and turn them away and be like, yep, hear you, but nope.
Absolutely not.
Absolutely not. And now like your content that you're putting out there is so relatable because people can really get behind it. They're like, yeah, that is an unpopular opinion. Or like, yeah, I also want to debunk this. So it's so refreshing. And I think that you are probably creating content for maybe like your younger self.
Absolutely. I like whenever I make posts like that, I have younger me in mind and just kind of, I can see the pattern of people. I get messages of people being like, oh, I'm really worried about eating this food because I've read that XYZ. And I'm like, I know exactly what you mean. And I hate that for you. So I'm going to debunk it.
I love that. Honestly, it's so refreshing. But I think you've got to experience all these things to then be able to like talk from experience and be like, yeah, I've been there. This is my journey, but I can now help you get out of yours.
Yeah,
which
exactly.
I think is so nice.
Yeah.
So to wrap everything up, we have a tradition, which is where I want to ask, what is in your handbag? What's in your bag? Can you share it?
So I haven't bought my normal bag, which has all my stuff in it.
That's okay.
Actually, got this really... Okay,
This is cool. Sorry.
This is a brand called Yi.
I've not heard of it, but
they do like flavoured sparkling water. Delicious.
Okay, this is cool.
But also I just want to shout, this is the coolest tote bag I've ever owned because you can put it like across your body and it's not doing that really horrible thing where it slips off your shoulder and you just get overstimulated and you're like...
Yes, and also like we don't need another tote bag, but that one is different and cool.
I got this like 2 weeks ago and I've used it every single day. So
love that.
That was one shout out. So I've got an umbrella.
Because we live in the UK and you never know.
It's disgusting outside.
It is.
Which is, not great. An umbrella. I have this. I actually don't know where I got this from. The Beauty Crop Peptide Calm Hydrating Lip Treatment.
Oh my God, that looks
cafe
lovely.
latte. Actually tastes like coffee as well, which I'm not sure if I like.
Okay, I was going to say, I don't think I want coffee on my lips all the time, but it looks nice.
But it's a nice colour, so that's in there. Vaseline.
Love. Can't go anywhere without
classic.
that.
I always try different lip balms. I always come back to Vaseline. It's just the best.
It is.
It's the best. I've got my house keys.
House keys, yeah.
With a little jammy dodger on there.
Oh my God, I love that.
And also, sorry. Oh no, it's not on here. It's on my car keys. Never mind. What else have I got in here?
AirPods in a nice case.
In a nice case, which I lost the top of to the tube.
The tube now has the top of that, but it's fine. It looks great.
And then I have a book because I read.
Oh my gosh, how to talk to children about food. Could this be more on brand if we try?
I know, and like you didn't even tell me. I'm so pleased I bought my book.
Is it good? Do you recommend?
So it's actually a really new book. It only came out like 2 days ago. So I've only read like 60 pages, but so far excellent. I would recommend, especially if you have children. Or are thinking about having children.
Yeah.
I obviously am reading, I don't have children. However, it's an interesting topic for me and I work with kids.
Yeah. So. I love that. I also think that your relationship with food infiltrates down to your children.
100%.
Massively.
100%.
I love that. Yeah. Good recommendation. Well, Sophie, thank you so much for joining me in the kitchen. I've loved it. I think your story is so refreshing and so many people will be like, she's speaking my language. I needed to hear this. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you guys so much for listening. And I hope you enjoyed the episode as much as I did. Sophie was so vulnerable, so honest in that episode. And I really appreciated that so much. Next week, we are joined by the gorgeous Claudia, who is a founder of Holy Cacao, to talk about the benefits of bone broth, benefits of cacao, and the journey into creating this amazing brand, which has truly taken off online. If you haven't seen it, check it out. You will not want to miss this episode, so click that subscribe or follow button to be notified when the episode comes out next week. See you then.